2 centuries before this one, in Africa's southern lands, a war was just beginning that would put blood on many hands. The colonizers fought for power, the Xhosa fought for peace, while some prayed quietly for all the killing to cease. Every struggle has its heroes, and this song's about just one, Makana of the Xhosa, who lies drowned off the Blauberg strand. Ah, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, on the shore where we wait, our children grow thin. Come, Makana, come, Makana, come, Makana, come. In the hills, in the distance, beats the warrior's drum. Makana was a prophet who cursed the foreign priests. They called his people godless, sinful, nothing more than beasts. But though Makana was a prophet, he knew gods don't fight our wars, that he'd have to find an army to chase the foreigners from the shores. And so together with the chief and Lambe, he sought out all the men who were willing to fight and die to win their country back again. But before the fight for freedom could properly begin, Makana and Lambe had another fight to win, against the good boy chief called Kerr, whose only claim to fame was the skill with which he played the collaboration game. And so at the Battle of Amalinde, Makana's first great fight, Kerr and all his good boys were put to flight. But Kerr cared nothing for all this talk of liberty. He just wanted back his power, and so he called in the colony, who, pleased to have a chance to fight another Kaffir war, sent an army across the river to enforce the great just empire's law, which they did simply by burning every dwelling they could find and stealing every head of cattle that the Xhosa left behind. But when his friends had headed south again and Kerr was alone, Makana and Lambe continued to reap what they had sown, and after dealing quickly with the good boy, they turned their army round and with 10,000 singing men marched on Grahamstown. Ah, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, on the shore where we wait, our children grow thin. Come, Makana, come, Makana, come, Makana, come. In the hills, in the distance, beats the warrior's drum. So on an early April morning in the year 1819, the colony awoke to a sleep-shattering scene. Down the hills from which the sun rose swooped 10,000 angry men, their voices calling as one, "We want our country back again." And at their head, with the sun behind him, Makana waved his tiny spear at the rifles and the cannons, behind which the colonists hid their fear. But the walls the colony had built around it were too high, too thick and too wide, and spears no match for the grape shot that the killer cannons fired. And so many dead and dying were left to fertilize the ground in the wake of the battle in the fields around Grahamstown. Ah, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, on the shore where we wait, our children grow thin. Come, Makana, come, Makana, come, Makana, come. In the hills, in the distance, beats the warrior's drum. Some people blame Makana for the outbreak of the war. After all, was there any reason for the Xhosa to feel sore? So Makana shrugged his shoulders, and he laid his weapons down, and he marched again, but this time alone, for far-off Grahamstown, where he told the colonists, who were reveling in their gains, that they could have him as their captive if that would end his people's pain. Ah, the colony was joyous when Makana turned himself in. They sent him straight to the Robben Island Holiday Inn, for a lifetime of watching the tricks of the sea that kept him from his people, dying to be free. Ah, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, on the shore where we wait, our children grow thin. come, Makana, come, Makana, come, Makana, come. In the hills, in the distance, beats the warrior's drum. But when his captors were celebrating the birth of their Christ, Makana and his fellow prisoners took their guards by surprise, and they put off in a boat, Makana standing up front, and aimed it straight as a spear for the Blaubergstrand. But with all those men wanting freedom packed into one tiny boat, when they reached the waves, the boat would not stay afloat. So Makana and his men were left to swim for the shore, from which they'd been banished not very long before. Ah, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, on the shore where we wait, our children grow thin. Come, Makana, come, Makana, come, Makana, come. In the hills, in the distance, beats the warrior's drum. But Makana swam to the nearest rock, and there he stayed, to urge his men onto the land that they were trying to save. And the swimming men heard above the roar of the sea the voice of Makana roaring, our people shall be free. Ah, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, on the shore where we wait, our children grow thin. Come, Makana, come, Makana, come, Makana, come. In the hills, in the distance, beats the warrior's drum. I hear you, said Makana, to the voices in his head, but the water is growing higher now, I'm as good as dead. New men will come to lead you, and many will die, before the spirit of Makana will at last be home and dry. Ah, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, on the shore where we wait, our children grow thin. Come, Makana, come, Makana, come, Makana, come. In the hills, in the distance, beats the warrior's drum. Ah, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, Makana, swim, on the shore where we wait, our children grow thin. Come, Makana, come, Makana, come, Makana, come. In the hills, in the distance, beats the warrior's drum.